car culture has changed and not always for the best. I came across this video by Regular Car Reviews. It's about cars being crushed because of street takeovers and racing. And I was kind of curious what they had to say, so I watched the video with my chat.
A reckoning is coming for people who drive like maniacs in the name of attention, clout, rebellion, or even just simple thrills. And I could stomach it if the reckoning was limited to the driver. You know, fines, taking away the license, restitution if property is destroyed, or even jail time if people got hurt. But the consequences are now being extended to the cars themselves. And I don't like that. I don't like it at all. You see, barely a week ago from the time of this video's release, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department demolished a 2009 Infiniti G37S and a 2007 Nissan 350Z.
But California was doing this to stop street racing for a little bit, and I don't know that it stopped street racing. I don't think that it did. I think personally fines kind of do really well, but obviously they don't like the idea, it sounds like, any more than I do, that the cars are getting crushed, because like there's a lot of good parts on those cars. I'm sorry, like looks like some good rims, you know, probably a hood. I mean, it looks like the bumper's banged up, probably because the cops pit maneuvered it or something like that, you know.
That
why don't they auction? That's a great question.
As part of their arrests for illegal street racing. And what's wild to me is that it was all a clear, unambiguous slice of administrative theater, because they didn't just do this behind the closed gates of the nearest junkyard. No, they called a press conference to let everybody...
Yeah, so they calling a whole press conference, it's kind of wild. But that, I mean, it's just, it is just their way of trying to like scare people away from it, right? The question is, because I think that's what California crushed, like, I think 20 cars once, made a big press conference about it, and then we never heard about it again. So I don't even know if they keep, I have no idea if California crushes cars still.
Know that they
should look into it after
these vehicles so little that they're not even interested in recouping some revenue for the force by selling them at auction. And yet, for as grotesque as this display is, once you hear the rationale behind destroying these cars and the new law that supports them doing this, it sort of becomes clear that it's time for certain parts of the automotive enthusiast community to grow up.
That's right, chat. Grow up.
We can send our best regards, because your friends don't rant, and if they don't rant, then they're not into cars.
All right, so on June 17th, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Sheriff Kevin McMahill and Clark County Commissioner Marilyn Kirkpatrick held a press conference at a recycling center in order to make a spectacle out of crushing a 2009 Infiniti G37S and a 2007 Nissan 350Z that, once again, were confiscated as a result of illegal activities. In the case of the Infiniti, the driver was part of an active street takeover where he was caught drifting harder than Takumi Fujiwara, nearly taking out spectators and other cars alike.
So bad.
Which, on the scale of automotive-related offenses, ranks above content creators who destroy cars for views like they're in a Street Fighter bonus level, but ranks below content creators who introduce themselves as ya boy. The Nissan, meanwhile, was doing...
Okay. I mean, I feel like this is going to be talking a lot about content creators, because I think that's what fuels a lot of this, right? I think this is why people are doing more, and it's like dangerous and sketchier things, is genuinely because like content creation. I guess, tell me if you think this isn't the case, but I feel like that is a problem with how these platforms like operate. They allow people to get tons of attention for doing dangerous things because they want the profits from that at the expense of it probably encouraging other people to do these reckless decisions and people getting hurt or dying from it. You know what I mean? But yeah, takeovers are really stupid and often really dangerous. As someone who used to be a part of the street racing community, takeovers weren't a thing. We would find a back road, we would race it, we'd try to be respectful to any cars that were in the area, and we'd be out of the way, and we'd be there for a little bit, and then we'd move on. We always be very careful about pedestrians, but it is still a huge risk not only for the other drivers that are there, but also for the drivers who aren't there for this event that is spontaneously happening. It's always a risk. And that's why it is dangerous. When I used to do street racing, back this is like 20 years ago, kind of in the heyday of it, right after, on the heels of, Fast and the Furious, all the hype was there for it. Everyone was kind of doing it back then. It was a different vibe than it is today. But I'm not really involved with the community as much anymore. I just know people who are, and they tell me the stories of what's going on. It's more like free rate pulls is like way more popular and common these days, until street takeovers started coming up on the scene. And I think street takeovers are just like the more dangerous version of this, right? Because everyone's trying to get that viral click video. They want to get in close and be the camera person and take the film, do the footage, and blah, 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 blah.
Nissan-related foolishness, like fleeing from law enforcement after getting caught engaging in trick driving exhibitions. Hilariously enough, the Nissan driver reportedly tried to change the car's appearance to escape the law, but it obviously didn't take. And it just has me imagining them going to a pay and spray at a 5-star wanted level while the cop is staring right at them. Of course, if the perpetrators are already in custody, why are we destroying these cars?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wondering.
As it turns out, this little stunt was intended to bring public awareness to a new law that would not only make this type of destruction mandatory in Las Vegas, but also kind of inevitable.
I don't like that.
According to Fox 5 Vegas, a piece of legislation sponsored by Assemblywoman Linda Hunt, not that Linda Hunt, would allow police to, quote, confiscate vehicles used in street racing and destroy them if they cannot pass a safety inspection. End quote. Now, anyone familiar with street racing knows that those
I assume he's about to go into it, but like that's super vague. That's like concerningly vague.
Those cars are going to be modded so extensively that the likelihood of their passing inspection is on the same level of possibility as a toddler passing a law school entrance exam. But what gets me is that the law is expansive enough to include cars used in other felony acts, so that presumably, even if they do pass inspection, they would still be destroyed, which really just feels like throwing the baby out with the Amsoil-infused bathwater.
Yeah, it's kind of, that is a weird decision. Like, why make it so expansive other than just like, I mean, are you just trying to flex that we have so many resources and we can just crush cars like crazy? This really gives me vibes of like the problems we had after doing the Cash for Clunkers program. If you don't know what the Cash for Clunkers program is, that was a program released by the U.S. government that was like, hey, bring in your old cars. We'll give you extra money for your trade-in value of your car to go towards the next car. The caveat is we take that car and we destroy that car. They actually ran a chemical that would basically melt the engine together into the car until it basically broke apart, and then the car had to be crushed, which absolutely destroyed the used car parts market. And I think that was devastating for like junkyards and other things that just, rely on these old cars coming through, and also made a ton of like rare cars just even more impossible to find parts for. It was an interesting program that failed horribly.
The things they could do with these cars rather than simply destroying them. They could have been used in training exercises for first responders to test out rescue equipment. I suppose in their destroyed state, they still could be, since it's not like you would test out the jaws of life on a car that doesn't look like a crushed can of LaCroix. But even if you don't give them to local emergency services, you could still easily have donated them to like a trade school or something.
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's
they
a
could
really
always
good point.
use donor cars for students to wrench on. Hell, even without donating, you could have reverted these to stock and auctioned them off to put money back into the community. Or maybe like...
Okay, but that would be doing something good for the community, and let's be honest, when did the cops want to do that?
Use them as part of a charity auction for victims of reckless driving. Something like that. And really, the only downside I can think of here is the off chance that members of the street racing community might try and buy back their buddies' confiscated cars at auction.
Who
which would
cares?
keep this Ouroboros of irresponsibility well fed, which, to be fair, is a pretty big downside and actually
I
plausible, I would think.
I mean, how plausible is it? For one, I doubt that. I mean, yes, okay, maybe that would happen, or like more likely someone else is gonna buy it and want a street race too. But like, you could say that about every car. You can't just like, okay, oh my friend's buddy's gonna go spend $2,000 buying my car back from an auction. No, they're fucking not. Like this kid who's probably modified their car, unless they're fucking rich, is going, God, I just got a $500 ticket, jail time, and everything else. They can't even unimpound their car half the time, you know? Like, this is just a go fuck car communities, go fuck, the environment kind of attitude. It really is. Like, I think this is like a really shitty policy.
Taking that into consideration, I can kind of see why law enforcement would see this as the move, that destroying the cars is better than repurposing them in some way.
I
Because the
disagree.
people engaging in these sorts of activities aren't going to learn any other way. If these irresponsible, misbehaving drivers aren't going to grow up, then you need to start treating them like toddlers. But even in the case of toddlers, you tend to take away
I do
their
not agree with
toys
this,
or
yeah.
give away their toys, not destroy their
Yeah.
toys altogether. Yet the punitive, almost retributive nature of this action against the offenders seems to be the point, as implied by Commissioner Kirkpatrick, who told the press, quote, "We can remind them that your prized possession can go away at a moment's notice if you put other people in harm's way."
Yeah, so it definitely sounds like we're the ones in control kind of thing. What do you want to call it? Like a power move, right? They're trying to show that we control everything that's going on. I don't think that's good. People shouldn't be doing street takeovers, but also we shouldn't, let them get away scot-free. I get that. I think when you're putting people's lives in danger, but like destroying the cars just feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. This is the spot for Need for Speed Heat. I think you're right. Yeah. Because it wasn't Need for Speed Heat inspired by what was going on in California originally, like back in the day. The thing is, here's the thing. I promise you right now, knowing the street racing community, knowing the tuning community, every single person I know there will not stop modifying cars and street racing. They will not stop. They will just find ways to do it more sneakily. They will hide it away from the cops in more ways, right? This is why the cops want cameras in every every corner. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. They'll just find ways around it. They will. The best thing you can do is give them more options for like finding ways to go out and street race and do more street racing, or not street racing, but rather real, sanctioned racing in ways that are affordable, easy to do, and easy to handle. They could be donating these cars to a program where people can come and learn how to race track cars. They could be doing good things with these cars to help people. They could do stuff besides saying like, no, you don't get this, and taking away all these toys or whatever. Like, sure, if you want to like take away the car and take away their license or whatever. And I don't think that's a great policy either. You're not reforming them. You're just yoinking it away from them and telling them, fuck yourselves. And that's just going to make them more rebellious to it. It doesn't solve the problem.
It's much like any of us. We all have our hobbies.
Yeah, you're right, Andrew.
Our pet projects. But really, this is more hurtful to them if you take their vehicle and now you're going to crush it. End quote. Now, on the one hand, I get how this is a bad thing. Those are perfectly good cars, although extensively modified, possibly even to an unrecognizable state. At the very least, you're not passing emissions with all these supercharged, straight-piped, cat-deleted, cold air intake-equipped, canyon-carving clown shoes. But in the grand scheme of things, they're just items. As capable of alteration as they were when they were transformed into the monstrosities they became, and as worthy of preservation as most other objects with even a modicum of potential use to the community at large. Yet, when you look at how frequent these acts of illegal driving have become and how frequent they've been over the decades, I kind of find myself wondering what choice these kinds of drivers have even given lawmakers. I mean, street racing isn't new, and neither is stunt driving, but I do feel like the rise of social media and the monetization thereof has created a clout culture that has elevated stunt driving to Darwinian levels. Seriously, just Google influencers arrested for stunt driving to
Yeah.
see a collection of the absolute dumbest clout-brained behavior you'll see this side of a high school cafeteria. People weaving in and out of traffic at ludicrous speeds, drivers destroying expensive cars doing jumps on residential streets,
I remember when a
burnouts
YouTuber
and
did that.
donuts in crowded streets,
Was a Tesla.
ghosts riding the whip, standing on the hood at speed. What kind of
Yeah,
moron
that's-
convinced you that premature death maxing is something to do?
That's
you know,
a
it'd be
little
one
too
thing
reckless,
if this were
yeah.
limited entirely to
That's-
Las Vegas. Because this type of
that's kinda
activity
wild.
is about as common there as overstimulated sports fans and under-maintained roads are here in the Keystone State. But as it turns out, Las Vegas police aren't the only ones straight up destroying cars as part of a message to street racers. They're just among the few to actually make national news for it. Literally,
Yeah.
just last August 2025, San Diego police destroyed a Toyota Chaser and a Yamaha R1 motorcycle as part of an initiative to curb street takeovers in the area. A month later, police in Louisville, Kentucky destroyed a 2021 Dodge Durango Hellcat that they confiscated
such a
from
nice-looking
the
car.
2024
What the fuck?
Street Rod Nationals. And you know, to that I just gotta kind of wonder, like, oh no, what's a fork doing in my kitchen? But much like in San Diego, the decision by Louisville officials to crush the car was intended to deter illegal street racing in the metro area. But, interestingly, in this case, people did complain, noting that this car could have been sold at auction rather
Yeah.
than destroyed, right? Yeah, see, I'm not the
This
only
is
one
like-
thinking this.
Yeah, that's what
Except
I'm thinking too.
officials
Like, that's
noted
weird.
that, well, no, it couldn't be sold at auction because it was equipped with more stolen parts than a plagiarist's autobiography, up to and including the engine, which I take to mean that it was basically a ship of Theseus that no longer mechanically resembled its factory counterpart.
Back when there was a big street racing bust in Minnesota back in the day, and they claimed that all these street racers are into stealing car parts. So we're going to check all the VIN numbers, we're going to check all the cars and compare everything. They checked, I think it was like 30 or 40 cars that night, and not a single one had a stolen car part out of them that they could verify. And that's the reality, is that most of the time they're saying there's crime and there's not. And I know people in that community. I knew some of these people that were on the news personally. I know they would not have stolen these stolen car parts. They worked hard for these things. The cops were just saying that as an excuse to justify the aggressive actions that they were taking. I don't believe the police's statement here. Police would never lie over Legos. I mean, it's another great example, right? You know, it's like the cops are showing how egregious they are in that scenario too. They just like believe this one person, don't pay any attention to the other person, no investigation. Just, oh yeah, this person's a trusted member of the community.
And so returning it to stock and
wild.
auctioning it off would have cost more money for the county than it would have brought in. But then that's just an assumption on my part. If nothing else, legislation does seem to be picking up across North America. And while I believe the Las Vegas law is the first that officially legally mandates the destruction of these cars, Our neighbors up north appear to have been the first to properly codify stunt driving legislation into law. As noted in a study by Canada's University of Western Ontario, a bill introduced in the province of Ontario made the definition fairly clear. Quote, stunt driving included the following activities: causing some or all tires to lose traction with the surface of the highway while turning, spinning tires or causing a vehicle to circle, lifting some or all tires from the surface of the highway, driving while the driver is not sitting in the driver's seat, preventing another vehicle from passing.
Seems a little vague in a few
driving
areas,
two
but I guess,
or
yeah.
more motor vehicles side by side where one of the motor vehicles occupies a lane
pretty
for
clear.
oncoming traffic, driving as close as possible to another vehicle, a pedestrian, or object without a reason, driving a motor vehicle on a highway with a connected nitrous oxide system, and driving 50 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. End quote.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I couldn't find any evidence that the penalties for breaking this law resulted in getting your car destroyed. But the other penalties should be pretty powerful deterrents, I would think, with fines of up to $10,000, 6 months in prison, a license suspension of up to 2 years, and a suspension of up to
$10,000.
10
That's
years on the
gnarly.
second conviction. But then people tend to ignore license suspensions anyway, so nah. And if they have the money to modify their cars to this extent, they can probably afford $10,000. Yet, this study of Ontario street racing and stunt driving laws is still relevant to the decision some jurisdictions in the United States have made to crush these cars altogether. Because
Yeah, I think it's
while
stupid to crush 'em.
discussing high school targeted education campaigns related to the legal risks and physical dangers of street racing and stunt driving, the authors of the study make the point that, quote, deterrence theory would also suggest that in order for the law to be effective in deterring the offenders, it has to be publicized and well enforced. End quote. And there you have it.
Yeah, it's like that explains why they did such a public event. But I think even still, like, I think if the threat of you losing the car, even if it goes to auction or even gets parted out, let it get parted out. Let it go back into the system so that, you know, people who have these Infinities, and some of these cars are getting kind of rare. Like, it's hard to find these, you know, G37s and whatnot out there. Especially if you need spare parts for it and you're on a budget. Like, yeah, you're going to go to the junkyard. Well, now, instead of it going to the junkyard, it's just going to get shred up. I think this is a bad choice. And I get that they're trying to do a big publicity stunt for it. And maybe this is the only two they'll ever kind of crushing. But they said it was mandatory. Making it mandatory to crush, I think is kind of gnarly. That's wild. Cops always have small PP energy. So true. So true.
I mean, is that not what car crushing accomplishes, at least in theory? Deterrence theory? It publicizes the law as a method of enforcement, since knowledge of the consequences might preclude the need to enforce the law as strictly. And it kind of makes sense because right now, Las Vegas task forces dedicated to busting up these street racing rings have led to literally dozens of arrests and the likely destruction of more cars than you could realistically call a press conference to crush. And while I think it's too soon to tell just what effect this deterrent might have on these rings, the premise behind doing this is sound, if for no other reason than that you're hitting these drivers in the wallet, right? Because maybe they do have $10,000 to pay the fines for breaking these laws, at least up in Ontario. But if you destroy the car, that's tens of thousands of dollars in expensive modifications on top of the base cost of the car and its upkeep, all down the drain. And people perk up enough when consequences threaten their freedom. But when you're threatening their pocketbook in this economy, yeah, I get why they're doing this.
Yeah, okay.
But even
I'm sorry, even like a 10,000. Okay, no, I don't know anyone in Toronto could afford a $10,000 ticket for one. I think that's a big enough deterrent as it is. So like I don't know. Like I think that's insane. Like honestly. But on top of that, we need to crush the car. It's like is it really solving the problem? I don't think it does. I don't think it does. And I genuinely do think that these kids will come back out and they'll do it again.
Disagreeing with the methods. I don't know that I can disagree with the notion that it's necessary. I'm sure there's a non-trivial chance you might have clicked on this video with the expectation that I would rail against police overreach or government overreach or whatever you'd call it when the man decides to impound your cube and then give you 30 minutes to move it. And considering all the hand-wringing I did about Cash for Clunkers way back when, you'd think I would hate this on principle.
Yeah,
That
I think you would.
That two enthusiast cars were mangled beyond recognition just to serve as the automotive equivalent of heads on the pikes outside the Red Keep. But I do wonder how many chances these drivers, or at the very least drivers like them, were given. How many got off with fines, with temporary license suspensions, with the expensive, though temporary, impounding of their cars? How many were given lax prison sentences that saw them free within whichever season they went in? Obviously, people drive on suspended licenses every single day.
Yep.
People pay to get their cars out of the impound lot every single day. People commit crimes, they go to prison, and they reoffend all the time. And that's true, but while I'm sure you can make the case that people who have their cars crushed will simply go buy another car and start the process all over again, I've got to believe that the financial toll will eventually make it so that monetary necessity overrides whatever desire they might have to act like a moron on public roads.
I don't think it will. I genuinely don't think it will. Like, there's kids out there. I say kids, but they're probably in their 20s, you know, like I was, that were doing street racing and were just taking their stock cars and street racing because they want to be a part of it. You don't have to have a fast car. You just have to have a car. And like, as so long as people have access to cars, this is probably going to continue to be a thing. Let's see what the rest of them say.
At the risk of sounding like the most boring square on car tube, I feel like these types of drivers are ruining car culture. That this clout-brained attitude where we load up a car with as many disruptive modifications as possible in the name of drawing attention to ourselves at the expense of others' peace and safety is legitimately embarrassing. You can appreciate an incredible build with all the modifications and tunes for horsepower, torque, handling, ride quality, appearance, whatever. They can be as loud and outlandish as you want. You can take them to car shows. You can peacock within the bounds of the car shows you take them to, provided you aren't being a complete menace. But if you're going to drive like a maniac, go do it on a track. Go do it on a closed course or on a private road. Don't do it on public roads in the middle of traffic. Don't shut down streets and block traffic. You're putting people in danger, and
It's hard
you're
for them to
making
do that.
other people
It's hard for them to
paint
find
car
places to do that
enthusiasts
stuff.
with the same wide brush. And for what? The smallest huff of acceptance from strangers? For pats on the backs from friends? Look, I'm not saying life is easy or even that it's fair, and I'm definitely not saying you can't enjoy yourself or the things you worked hard to earn. But seriously, there has to be some sense of personal responsibility in how we operate our cars. Doesn't there?
That I agree
people
with,
will
yeah.
legitimately act as though because they aren't under the influence when they do it, that they aren't doing anything wrong. And while people who aren't actively engaging in this sort of behavior aren't likely to be affected by any of this, unless you're one of the unfortunate few to run afoul of a street takeover, all of it still speaks to how automotive enthusiasts are viewed by communities and their law enforcement.
Yeah.
How people twist their
Certainly doesn't
underwear
help.
over car shows and meets in their town. How police are out in force to meet these types of events. How much insurance organizers have to take out in the first place as a bulwark against the stupidity of people who act like every Lowe's parking lot is a stage in burnout paradise. It is tough all over. And hang on,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be an old man for a minute. I remember a time, okay, when car enthusiasts kind of had the benefit of the doubt. The presumption that there were more good apples among us than bad. And it was expected that bad apples could be reformed through impounding, fines, or license suspensions in extreme cases, or prison in the most unthinkable extremes. I just feel like there was this assumption that you would learn your lesson if the punishment was fair, that you were capable of learning while still keeping access to the vehicles you used to break the law. Or maybe I'm just naive and I haven't read enough news stories of all the times this has happened over the course of my waking
Yeah, I
life.
don't know.
Maybe enthusiasts never had the benefit of the doubt. Maybe enthusiasts have always been subjected to suspicious eyes. But I will say that it definitely feels like there are a lot more police checkpoints now. We see police more active in places they weren't before. And maybe that's a bigger conversation, but I do think that at a certain point, law enforcement and legislators realized that fines weren't going to cut it anymore, and neither would an impound lot. Thrill seekers and clout chasers were more than symptoms of a disease. If you want to look at it in medicine terms, they were kind of more of the metastasis of a far worse social condition. And it's this, that at any given time, we are the main character of our world. And that means the things we want to do come before the peace or safety of anybody else who isn't us or the people we're trying to impress. And I'm sorry, but if that's how you feel, how you think, then maybe try growing up.
Honestly, I think because social media sites end up rewarding such dangerous behavior because it's captivating to us and many people are going to watch it, it's going to get encouraged further for people who are clout chasing. And I do feel that part of this behavior is because of existing gatekeeping in the car community. It's left many feeling alienated and allowing for these groups to kind of grow on their own without having the kind of understanding that these things aren't acceptable. Even as someone who street raced decades ago, I still condemn this behavior. But there are too many factors encouraging it to happen. Not one action is going to solve the broader problem. And I'm not sure I have any answers either. However, there are a lot of factors of why it continues to happen. There's a lack of ease of access, the cost is expensive, becoming an automotive enthusiast is just getting more and more expensive, so you're going to have people doing things to cut costs. I think we're going to need to come together as communities to work and figure out what solutions work best for our areas. And I don't have all the answers. I think there are great people who are working to make a difference in the car community. People want to have fun with their cars, and giving them more opportunities to do so is part of the solution. Ultimately, I don't like that they're crushing the cars, and I don't think that's really the solution here. I think they could be doing more constructive work to actually better communities. But as we know, the police don't actively do that unless they think it's good for PR. And unfortunately, we've gotten to a point where if this does continue, the responses will become only more violent from law enforcement.